An intelligence contractor is under arrest this morning.
25-year-old Bernie Sanders supporter by the name of Reality Winner will be charged under the Espionage Act.
I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. I want people in handcuffs, and I want to see people behind bars. Somebody who leaks documents against the law has got to suffer the consequences. This is mind-blowing.
One of the suspects on their radar, and maybe for a while. So how did he slip through yet again?
No room in counter-terror for political correctness. It's so delusional to not start stacking on some surveillance that it almost feels like an intelligence failure.
President Trump will not stop fired FBI Director James Comey from testifying before Congress this week.
Like so many hyped hearings before it, it probably won't live up to its billing because there are a number of constraints on Comey and what he can say.
Today we are taking the first important step to clearing the runway for more jobs, lower prices, and much better transportation.
Start with a few Fox News alerts right now. ICE is taking credit for an Australian terror standoff that left 1 man dead and 3 police officers hurt. Police killing the 29-year-old Somali refugee in a shootout after they say he murdered a man and lured a woman to an apartment building where he held her hostage. The suspect, a known criminal on parole, had been acquitted of plotting a terror attack at a Sydney Army base in 2010. And another alert right now, the Muslim community in London widely condemning the deadly terror attacks. More than 130 British imams now refusing to bury the terrorists. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson applauding that decision during his visit to New Zealand.
And I was actually encouraged when I heard on the news this morning that a number of imams in London have condemned these attackers and said they will not perform prayer services over their funerals, which means they're condemning their souls. And that is what has to be done. Now, only the Muslim faith can handle this.
Secretary Tillerson is now heading to American Samoa before returning to the U.S. Major changes coming to the VA. Secretary David Shulkin announcing the department will adopt the same electronic health record system that the Pentagon uses in a move to improve coverage for vets. President Trump praising the decision.
This is one of the biggest wins for our veterans in decades, and I congratulate Secretary Shulkin for making this very, very important decision.
Secretary Shulkin says the VA will spend up to 6 months planning the new system. And now a feel-good story for you. Graduating high school, it's always really exciting, right? But it was extra special for one teenager whose soldier brother showed up to see her walk across the stage. Take a look. Gotta love that. Army soldier Derek Thomas surprising his sister in Spring, Texas. He had been training for months at Fort Bragg, and she clearly had no idea he was going to be there. Their father calling it an epic moment. Congratulations to her and to their family. Guys, back to you.
That is so sweet. All right, now it's time to bring in Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News' senior judicial analyst, and oftentimes things are breaking as we're talking. We do have news, and we'll get to in a short time, about a third, the identification of a third assailant in the London attacks on Saturday night. And we'll go over that in a second. But we also have the news of a huge leak.
The government has charged and arrested a 25-year-old girl. Her name is Reality Winner. That is her actual name. For leaking classified documents to the media, Judge.
Well, look, this is obviously a serious crime. The Trump administration has been bedeviled by leaks, although this leak actually helps him, because if what she leaked is accurate, Russians are denying it, of course, it shows Russian efforts, independent of Trump, independent of the Trump campaign, to hack into American elections by putting cookies, we all know what those are, on the
phishing devices.
Correct, phishing devices on the websites of people that run the elections, getting them to grab the cookie, and then they can control the outcome of the numbers there. We don't know if they succeeded, but we know that they tried, and we know that they had the software to do it because of what this woman leaked. Look, she's going to be prosecuted. She took an oath not to leak. I'm not defending this. It's a form of espionage. But for once, I am happy to know the truth, even though it came about as a result of a crime.
Okay, so she had a top secret clearance, and she worked for a company called, she was a contractor with Pluribus International Corporation. They have the nation's top secrets on their devices.
Yes.
It's shocking how easy it is to get the secrets and get it out. For instance, this, apparently she printed it out on a piece of paper, folded it up, took it out of the building, then mailed it to The Intercept. It's pretty easy to do.
Yes, and it's mind-boggling about how easy it is to do. I don't know if you remember the movie about Edward Snowden, but there's a scene in which he's playing with a Rubik's Cube, and he tosses the Rubik's Cube, which is filled with computer chips, to a security guard, bypassing the safety device that would have alerted them that there are devices in there. Look, she probably knew how to sneak something out of the building. It's obviously too easy to do it if this can happen. This could jeopardize her boss's contract with the government.
And by the way, it should. If this 25-year-old, and I'm sure she's not that unique, although she seems bright, a Bernie Sanders supporter who despises Donald Trump, judging by her social media, how many other contractors still have this incredible access? They can walk out with whatever. They have not put the safeguards in yet.
There are 60,000 people that work for the NSA. Fewer than 5,000 are employees of the government. Do the math. You got 55,000 private Americans employed by many, many, many contractors that are hired by the federal government. Now, they all take the same oath, and they all have the same security clearance, and they all have the same laws that regulate them, but they have different levels of the ease with which they can get things out of the building.
Let's talk a little bit about what's happening on television on Thursday. James Comey, former FBI director, is going to go up and testify in front of the Senate Intel Committee in public and then behind closed doors. What do you think? You know, the people who hate Donald Trump hope he goes there and spills the beans and makes the president look terrible. But at the same time, if he's got information that makes the president look terrible, he would have had an obligation earlier to reveal it.
You know, even though we are covering it, and I'll be part of the...
All the networks are covering
coverage, everybody is covering. I have a feeling, just an instinctual feeling, that there's less there than we anticipate, and there's a lot of hype here, and it might be a letdown. I have a feeling that a lot of questions will go, well, Mr. Comey, can you show us this document to which you've referred? Answer, I can't show it to you in public because it's a classified document.
Can you tell us,
what did so-and-so say to you at such and such a time? Well, I can't tell you because it's classified. Now, I could be wrong, but I will tell you this. He's been debriefed by Bob Mueller. The last thing a prosecutor wants is a potential star witness in another environment under oath testifying where the prosecutor's not there. So that tells me that Bob Mueller knows what Jim Comey is going to say and has approved what Jim Comey is going to say, meaning whatever he says is not going to jeopardize any of the investigations that Mueller is running. But there are so many constraints on what he can say, I don't know that this is going to be the grand explosion that we're all talking about.
I just admire, and sarcasm included, Senator Warner just really wants to get to the bottom of this, but clearly thinks this is an obstruction of justice if you looked at his tone on Sunday. And then you have Senator Susan Collins says, listen, there's a difference between someone saying, hey, listen, Mike Flynn's a good guy. He's fired. He's out of here.
I hope you let him go.
Yeah, I hope you let him go, as opposed to, hey, I'm your boss. I'm telling you right now, General Flynn's done. End this investigation.
Well,
that's what it's how he explains it's going to be key.
I have two answers to that. One is you're exactly correct. They are vastly different conversations. But think about this. The president is the chief executive officer of the United States government. He runs the executive branch. Everybody in the executive branch works for him because he's the only one in the executive branch answerable to the people. Should there be entities in the executive branch that are answerable only to their own conscience and not to the president? Stated differently, shouldn't the people that work for him obey him? Well, shouldn't he have the authority to say, do this, do that, otherwise leave?
But, Judge,
that's a theory of government which we had up until the Nixon years.
You know he'll go with the first one, because then he says, oh, he was just saying, I like this guy, just go easy on him, versus the second one, because that means the president is guilty of something, but it also means he's guilty of not reporting it, correct?
Well, we don't know to whom he reported it because we don't know to whom the memos were sent. If they just sat on his iPhone, he didn't report it anywhere. If he sent it to, for example, the public integrity section of the Justice Department, he complied with
Let me ask you something about the Supreme Court.
Correct. So, look, there's 5 memos. We're going to need to see what they say in conjunction with each other. We're going to need to see the tone and the context in which...
But also, regarding the memos, is there a possibility somebody's going to say, okay, you got memos about Donald Trump. What about the Hillary Clinton memos? Can we see those too?
Yes. I hope that question is
Hey,
asked.
what about your interaction with Loretta Lynch?
What about your interactions with Barack Obama? Yes, 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 and yes. I think those questions will be asked.
Let's see your meticulous notes on
Judge,
that.
the president wants the Supreme Court to expedite this travel ban thing. What is the I was thinking about this last night. What is the next process? What is the Supreme Court? When will they see it? When will they make a decision?
I think they will wait for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to rule, which could come down any day now, as soon as today. Because they don't like to rule on something where the same issue is pending in a court below. Look, the Supreme Court could very well say, we're not ruling at all. Go back and try these cases. There have been no trials. If they have to go back and try it and wait for a decision there and then appeal it to the appeals court and wait for a decision there, you know when this will get to the Supreme Court? At the end of Donald Trump's present term. The other avenue...
And the 120 days is up. So
correct. The other avenue of approach is for the Supreme Court to say, we're going to lift the stay during the trials. We're going to keep the stay, meaning the order is not enforced during the trials. But they don't like to rule on cases that are not final. They don't like to rule in the midst of the case.
Did he hurt his case yesterday by using the word ban on a tweet and said it is a ban and I wish we had the original version?
I think if his lawyers could have restrained him, they would have chosen other words. I'm trying to be diplomatic, so the short answer is yes, yes, yes.
Famously, Jeff Sessions recused himself from anything regarding Russia. There's some question whether or not Justice Ginsburg should disqualify herself regarding the travel ban because she said some extraordinarily incendiary things about Donald Trump when he was running for president.
She said terrible things about President Trump. This is frustrating. If I, as a trial judge, had said the things about Donald Trump that she said, and a case came before me, and I didn't recuse myself, the appellate courts would kick me off the case in a heartbeat. So the rules for recusal, for getting off a case when you have prejudged it or appeared to have prejudged somebody in the case, are different for the Supreme Court, where there are no recusal rules, where you can say anything you want about the litigant and still stay on the case. Even the other 8 justices can't kick her off.
Wow, so she'll stick it out.
She'll stick it out.
Speaking of prejudge, before you were a judge, you were a little boy who loved his birthday, and today's the judge's birthday.
Happy birthday
we have really rolled out a single cupcake for Judge Napolitano.
Right.
Happy birthday.
At my age,
That's
just
Kelly
so
May.
forget birthday.
Look at
Kelly
this.
May.
Kelly, is this your fingerprint on top?
Yes,
it's
it
like
is. Go ahead, Brian.
It's
Go
like
ahead.
the mark of Zorro in the top.
All right.
There you go.
What are you going to do for your birthday?
Thank you, guys.
This
all
is it.
kinds of good stuff.
Well, we're glad you were born.
Oh, how sweet.
Happy
Thank
birthday,
you.
Judge.
My
It's
parents
getting
are glad I
very
was born
emotional.
as well.
All right.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad.
Are they watching?
Yes, they are.
Hey, Mom and Dad, you did a great job.
Right. He wants gift certificates. He wants to pick out his own stuff.
That's true.
One of the smartest guys here. You know the law backwards and forwards. I know you'll say I went to law school as a judge, but not all my lawyer friends do. You're great.
Thank you, Judge. Happy birthday.
All right, meanwhile, still ahead. A woman shamed out of flying the American flag on Memorial Day by her apartment complex. This you have to hear to believe.
And President Trump has a big plan to change the way we fly. Could it mean cheaper and faster travel? The president of FedEx says yes.
The previous administration spent over $7 billion trying to upgrade the system and totally failed. Americans can look forward to cheaper, faster, and safer travel, a future where 20% of a ticket price doesn't go to the government, and where you don't have to sit on a tarmac or circle for hours and hours over an airport.
There you get the president yesterday during Infrastructure Week. As part of his plan to revamp U.S. infrastructure, President Trump vowing to update air traffic control, including separating it from the FAA and turning control over to private business. The FedEx president, David Bronzik, has met with the president to discuss a plan. He joins us right now from our nation's capital. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you as well. Our air traffic control system right now, we all want to think it's safe, but we're relying on World War II technology, aren't we?
Well, that's true. I have to give a shout out to the great men and women that work in the air traffic control system and
of course,
people that do keep us safe. But you're right. We're falling behind on the technology and the modernization of our air traffic control systems, which is disappointing because America should always lead. We should lead in this area. We would bring so much good to the flying public, the shipping public. I mean, there's so many positive things. We would reduce fuel emissions. We'd reduce fuel, the carbon.
Well,
footprint.
David, it all sounds great. How would it work?
Well, how it would work is we would have a system in place like 60 other countries around the world do today. They've modernized their system. They've made the technology apply from the ground-based systems to the airline systems. All of our planes already have the systems in place to use the technology. So you'd have the FAA doing the great job of controlling safety, and that's a priority for all of us. And then you'd have the operations of the system be managed and funded by a nonprofit, public-private partnership that, quite frankly, a lot of countries around the world do today.
20 seconds, David. Would it be cheaper? Obviously, it's going to be safer. Would it be cheaper for us? Because I heard a Democrat say yesterday, yeah, we don't know how much this is going to cost. It could cost a lot more.
Well, the funding would be self-funded, so of course we already pay for the system today. We just want to modernize it. We want to upgrade it to make our airports and the air traffic controllers have the ability to be more efficient, more productive, make it safer, quite frankly, probably make it more productive and cheaper in the long run. So I would say yes.
All right, very good. When it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight, FedEx is who you turn to. David is the president there. David, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve.
All right. Meanwhile, forget radical mosques turning vulnerable young men into terrorists. The new jihadi breeding ground, the internet. Is it too big to monitor? A former Islamic extremist takes us inside the new wave of radicalization, and that is next.
Police identifying, and this is new, the third London terrorist in Saturday's attack. He's this man, 22-year-old, not on their radar, much like the second one that we revealed, unlike one of his fellow attackers that was first revealed, and you're looking at him there. Meanwhile, Google under fire for not removing hate-filled YouTube brands by jihadi preachers who inspired these London terrorists. Google insists it hasn't broken any rules, but is this the new breeding ground for radicalism? Theresa May brought this up yesterday. Joining us right now is the former Islamic extremist, author of Our Radical, My Journey Out of Islamist Extremism, Maajid Nawaz. And Maajid, I did wish we didn't need your expertise so often, but we do. So we find out one of these guys had the ISIS flag hanging out in a park, seen it on a documentary. You know British law. Why wouldn't they move in on a guy like this?
Well, this guy, I can tell you, Khurram Bhatt, who you're referring to, not only had an ISIS flag, last Eid, last year, physically attacked one of my members of staff, Dr. Osama Hassan, a senior Islamic researcher. I can break that to you for the first time. The police have just, within 2 minutes, confirmed that he did physically attack one of my members of staff. We reported him to the police as an extremist. The police were very well aware of this guy, and unfortunately, Brian, it seems like we have become so accustomed in Europe and in Britain to extremists who are living among us that even when they appear in documentaries telling us that they are extremists, telling us that they will not condemn ISIS, because we become so accustomed to living among them, we just we don't pay any heed to it, and this is the result, what we see happen on London Bridge.
Maajid, you can't tell me that force that took this guy down in 8 minutes, these three down in 8 minutes, you know they had, their instinct is to pick up the potential terrorist. And Theresa May says the age of political correctness must stop. So does anything change today?
Well, her tone has certainly changed, and there are a few things that she needs to do immediately to demonstrate this is not just all talk. It's been over a decade since the 7/7 attacks that struck London, and what we've been suggesting is that the government's counter-extremism policy, known as PREVENT, that's meant to be working within communities to galvanize communities against this jihadist insurgency, which is running out across Europe, this policy currently doesn't have any central coordination. So the Ministry of Justice that manages the prisons doesn't know what the Department for Education is doing, that manages the schools and universities. And in turn, they don't know what the Department for Communities and Local Government are doing. And in the real world, of course, all of those things are connected. So what we've been urging the Prime Minister to do is forthwith appoint a counter-extremism coordinator that is responsible for coordinating the government's counter-extremism policy, a bit like your Homeland Security Department. We don't have that at the moment. And we want that appointment to have teeth, to have real power, and to be accountable only to the Prime Minister.
All right, so that's some great points, and that is some stunning news that you had a confrontation with the killer, one of the three killers. Now I got to ask you about the possibility that Theresa May is also right when she says social media is the problem. We got to get cooperation from Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other major social media sites to pull down these radical imams in some cases that are radicalizing these people from afar, some from the grave, like this guy Jabril, who is a Palestinian American, and another guy like Alawaki, who's been dead for 5, 6, 7 years. What could social media do?
Well, these people are definitely being radicalized on social media echo chambers. They are networked, they are connecting with each other over social media. But in every case we've studied and that we've found, they also, as always, have an offline element to them, and they are connected offline too. And that radicalization doesn't just occur online. There has to be that offline real-world connection. Through our studies, we've found that, and that's the same applies here with Rashid Radwan and Khurram Butt. They were connected offline to the Al Muhajirun network, which is now a banned organization in the UK. Their leader was convicted for pledging allegiance to ISIS, Anjem Choudhury. And so Theresa May's plans to regulate the internet, one of the problems with them is that it's somewhat impractical because, of course, most of the social media companies are based in America, and you have the First Amendment rights that we don't have here. And so somebody can be espousing completely outlandish extremist ideas, but insofar as they're not specifically and directly advocating for targeted violence, the social media companies protect their rights to espouse extremist ideas under the First Amendment rights. So I think a practical way forward would be to encourage what we call counter-speech online and alternative narratives, and a lot more needs to be done, and a lot more can be invested in that work.
Although there are monitors on all these sites trying to pull down stuff that obviously are inflammatory and spout violence. Majid Nawaz, thanks so much.
A pleasure.
All right, and that is new news, that one of these killers actually attacked somebody that works for his organization. Meanwhile, just ahead, just about everyone agrees Kathy Griffin went way too far with President Trump, which she did with President Trump and that big stunt. But the ladies of The View feel differently.
And now they're piling on her like she's Charles Manson. Get over it.
Okay, good. Get over it. Dan Bongino, we'll see if he gets over it. And it turns out socialism really does pay. How Bernie Sanders is cashing in. I guess he's got to divide all that money amongst all of his followers.
We're just showing off. We've got a gigantic studio now with a big sign that says Fox and Friends. 7:33 here in New York City. Right now, let's dial in former Secret Service agent, former New York City Police Department detective, and the host of Renegade Republican, Dan Bongino, who joins us from down in Palm Beach Gardens today. Dan, good morning to you.
Good morning. Hey, thanks for being here. By the way, thanks for the promotion, but I was just a cop, not a detective.
Okay. I appreciate it. You could have been, if you stayed with it, you would have been a detective.
Dan, how about the news this morning?
Right.
Finally, an arrest for the anti-Trump leaks. A 25-year-old girl, her real name is Reality Winner, and she has been arrested, charged with espionage for handing classified information to the press. What do you know about her? Who is she?
Yeah, you know, she's a Bernie Sanders supporter, which really tells you everything you know. I'm sure she donates all of her salary in her redistribution efforts as well to combat income inequality. You know, it's just these people are unbelievable. What's really upsetting me about this, and Ainsley, listen, I'm speaking from experience here, not with forked tongue, because I resigned my job in the Secret Service. I'm not asking for a pity party, but I gave up my salary, my health benefits, and everything because I felt like the country was headed in the wrong direction under Barack Obama. So here's my advice to these leakers. Grow a spine, you gutless punks. Leave the government. Stop taking our taxpayer money, you thieves, to basically destroy the United States from within, which is what you were doing. Because if this is your model of governing going forward, we're all really screwed. Because if we lose the presidency to a Democrat, I would give the exact same advice to a Trump supporter working in the government now. Do not do that. You swore an oath.
Dan, my fear is that there's so much more like this. I don't think this 25-year-old has to be that unique. You have to wonder what else they're doing. They're private contractors. What type of oversight are we giving them?
Yeah, sadly, there's a large cadre of losers right now working within the government amongst very patriotic people, by the way. Thankfully,
Absolutely.
we have a lot of good people in there as well, whose loyalty is not to the government, it's to their political ideology first. Go find a new line of work, you spineless cowards. You're in the wrong field.
Well, you know, over the last couple of months, Donald Trump, the president, has made it very clear that, you know, while the FBI and these various congressional committees are investigating the Russia thing, he has said the real story are the leakers, these leakers. And so now they've made it very clear they are cracking down on people who steal top secrets and leak them to the press.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is we need to prosecute. You know, they have those signs up, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Yeah.
In this case, they really need to apply that. This has to be a good, solid 10-year sentence or whatever the law applies, the maximum end, to set an example for everyone else. And if you do this, there's not going to be any leniency. You're not going to get a pat on the, or a smack on the wrist.
Dan, what do you know about who has this type of information? Who has classified information? Because when I heard she was 25 years old, I do know that she worked in the Air Force, and she speaks several Middle Eastern languages. So maybe that's why she was working for this company, Pluribus International. But they have 22 locations all